Welcome to VCR, a vintage cinema rewind. We're bringing old movies to new viewers.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Blake. And I'm waiting for a funny quote from you.
I got a cheers from the movie.
We have enough cheers in our friend group already, but let's do it.
Here's to swimming with bow-legged women.
All right. We've got a really good movie to talk about today. And surprisingly, maybe even shockingly, somehow neither of us have seen Jaws prior to this point in time.
Yeah, like, everyone our age, like, knows so much about it, but we haven't really watched it. We've seen it referenced so many times, I think, that we just never thought, like, hey, let's sit down and watch this.
Yeah, it's really strange because I think the score of Jaws is maybe one of the most iconic scores of all time. Like, it's easily
Just about, yeah.
the easiest to, like, know. Like as a child, I knew the Jaws theme.
Yeah.
Not seeing the movie.
You would pretend you were Jaws in the pool and do the dun
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, for as long as I can remember, I know the quote. I can remember.
We're gonna need a bigger.
We're gonna need a bigger quote. We're gonna need a bigger boat. I got sidetracked there because I said for as long as I can remember, and I really wanted to finish that with I always wanted to be a gangster.
I think about that all the time.
Wanting to be a gangster?
Oh yeah, just that quote pops into my head every time someone's like, "Ever since I can remember."
It's such a good movie. Oh my god. Yeah, I'm just perpetually thinking about Goodfellas and The Big Lebowski, so that's me in a nutshell. Anyway, we're talking about the smash hit first summer blockbuster Jaws that came out in 1975. And the reason why we're doing this is because we're on the cusp of Shark Week, which starts July 24th.
Shark Week started early for me. That was Shart with a T.
Yeah, I got that. I didn't know how to react to it, to be honest.
Yeah,
Should I be concerned? Is it funny?
Well, this movie got me pretty good. I was actually... there was one scene that actually startled me. Like, it actually did the jump scare. I didn't expect that.
I think I know what you're talking about because it also made me jump. Like, I was like, whoa!
Yeah, that's exactly me too.
Yeah, I don't think a movie has unsettled me in this specific way since we watched The Thing for the podcast last summer or last fall.
Yeah, this was another, like, master of suspense. And, like, I can't believe we didn't watch this before.
It blows my mind.
I think it was so big that it was something that you didn't have to watch or something. Still, it's crazy that we haven't watched it.
I think it's one of those things where, and it's similar to TV shows, where it's something like everybody talks about it and everybody knows the big plot beats and and aspects of the film or of the TV show in other cases where you're just like, I don't need to watch it kind of thing. Yeah. But then you do and it blows your mind. Yeah. And
it's so much better than I was expecting.
Oh, and it held up so well. Like, the special effects, I couldn't... In contrast to Conan, where we did talk about some of the special effects not holding up, this movie holds up for being almost 50 years old to today's standards, in my opinion.
I 100% agree.
All right, well, let's get into the plot of the film.
Do we really need a plot summary? Again, I'm just kidding. There's screams, boats, and a shark. Everyone knows it. But let's actually do it. Amity is a small beach town that relies on tourism in the summer to make money. The new sheriff in town finds a dead beachgoer who is clearly attacked by a shark and has to fight against the business owners in town to let him close the beaches. Once another death occurs, a bounty is put out on this man-eater, and the sheriff, an oceanographer, and a rough old fisherman must go fishing.
And you kind of highlighted this a little bit in that brief description, that there's almost two very distinct parts of this movie that you could almost split in half.
Yeah.
There's the onshore part where there's like the political element. It's very tense.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly what's happening yet or where things are heading. And then the second part is all on the boat, and it's three men versus the element, and the shark being the element in this case. And that's where this movie goes into a hall of fame for man versus element for me, which is a genre or a subgenre that for me has a really special place in my heart. I've always been fascinated with that, like just man versus something out there. Nature, yeah, exactly. Like most recently, The Terror Season 1, the British exploration of the Canadian Arctic back in the 1800s. It's one of the most tense and like just mind-boggling, epic, crazy, I don't know, scary, like TV 10 episode miniseries I've ever seen. Along with like
what's that one, Liam Neeson in The Wild with the Wolves?
I think it's called The Grey.
The Grey. Oh yeah. So they all have similar elements to Jaws too.
It's a primal fear, I think, that
like a realistic fear.
Yeah, that we as humans in our cushy homes, especially in like North America and Europe, just don't experience that part of life very often. And there's something visceral about that really can shake you to your core.
Yeah. So that mixed with the on-land first part of the movie, where it is human versus human and like profit driven versus like we should do what's right. There's like a
and the tension that it
there.
builds up to that point, and the fear of the villain, in this case the shark, that it builds up to. Like, I know you couldn't just have them on the boat hunting the shark because the stakes wouldn't feel real enough. And it builds the stakes, and it builds that primal fear and what's out in the water, basically.
Yeah, they really chummed the waters for us. Also, did you say bottling? Mind bottling?
Yeah, like when it puts your mind in a bottle.
It's fucking boggle.
That's from, it's a Will Ferrell quote.
Yeah, but still.
I knew it was gonna bug you.
Yeah, I had to mention it.
It was gonna put your mind in a bottle.
And then I was gonna smash you with that bottle for using that.
All right, let's move into characters and people you may know. So the primary protagonist of Jaws is Chief Martin Brody.
I thought Jaws is the protagonist. We want the shark to win.
I guess point of view, like climate, I don't know. Yeah, you could maybe make an argument that Jaws the real hero here, fighting the
capitalism.
Yeah.
Just close the beach and I'll stop eating you.
Oh, God.
Anyways, sorry. Main protagonist.
Yeah.
Chief Brody.
And he's kind of a fish out of water, so there's my zinger.
Oh, yeah. Good one.
He's a cop from the city, from New York, and he's trying to make a difference in a small town. He really feels out of place with this often. Like, he doesn't like going in the water. He doesn't want to play politics with the small town community. It's really interesting, and I think he's kind of the character that is supposed to be the most relatable, like the everyman that you kind of see yourself through, because there's some slightly more wacky characters in this movie that we're going to talk about. And Brody is played by Roy Scheider, who's kind of an interesting actor. He reprised his role in Jaws 2 because, of course, a movie this big is going to get sequels, which we'll get into later.
Yeah.
The other roles that he's known for are actually films that came out prior to Jaws, such as The French Connection and The Seven Ups, where he plays an NYPD detective in both. And that's kind of why Spielberg wanted him specifically for this role, because he's played the one side of it, and now he's putting him in that fish out of water scenario, right? And for Scheider, he actually really despised these types of roles, almost like this is a situation where he got kind of typecast in that detective type of role, and he never wanted to begin with, which is really interesting because you and I talked about that on the last episode, how Arnold Schwarzenegger almost became typecast into the role of like the He-Man kind of role, but through dumb luck wasn't able to take on any other roles in that genre. So I think honestly that this is probably the high point in Roy Scheider's career. So if that
until he hooked up with Adam Sandler and started doing funny movies.
Yeah, but he
that's Rob Schneider.
Oh,
sorry, I'm just doing jokes today. I gotta get into this. Sorry. I literally saw Roy Scheider. I was like, Rob Schneider? And it was like the first words that I read when the movie started playing.
There's definitely like a word for that where you slightly get words wrong, but it's probably German or something. Anyway, our next big character in the film is Matt Hooper, the marine biologist. One of my favorite characters in the film.
Yeah,
he's kind of the kooky scientist.
Yeah.
Really passionate about sharks. He knows more than anybody else in the town, and that's why he's sent to do some research on the shark. He's not from the town. He comes in from a big city. Yeah. And he's kind
from
of
the Oceanographic Society.
Yeah, and him and the last character that I'm going to talk about have some tension between them because they both have a very different lifestyle. Like their life experiences are very different. The way that they see sharks and nature is very different, and the way that they want to deal with problems is very different.
Yeah, like I think there's so much tension there because they're adjacent. Mm-hmm. They work in similar fields, just completely different experiences.
Yeah. And there's also some off-screen tension that we might talk about in effects and filming as well a little bit later. But anyway, Hooper is played by Richard Dreyfuss. Very interesting filmography with Dreyfuss. The most notable role, and it's probably not his most notable role, but the role that, like, I was like, his voice sounds familiar. And that voice is the voice of Adult Gordy in Stand By Me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really cool connection there.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies of all time. But he also appears in American Graffiti, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and What About Bob as well, which is another massive Bill Murray movie. As well as, I was also going to mention The Goodbye Girl, which is the first rom-com to earn over $100 million at the box office. Huh. So pretty notable career, having Jaws under his belt, being the first big summer blockbuster, and then having the first big rom-com as well.
Wow.
Which we might have to check out at some point because it sounds pretty noteworthy.
Yeah, I feel like he didn't get to do too much else at the forefront of like big film or anything like that. Like he's not in anything else really. Like obviously the Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but like after the 70s, I don't know anything else that he's done. Maybe that rom-com, but I haven't seen that either.
Well, What About Bob is the 90s, and he did have some films in the 2000s as well. I think that he kind of maybe fades into being not a main character a little bit later on in his career.
I felt like he was so good in this, and I wanted I wanted him to have this like explosive career, but it just like he obviously did a lot still. Like he's in so many other things, but yeah.
I think you're underestimating the importance of some of the films that I've highlighted. And maybe we need to watch some of those to get that. Like, I wouldn't say that he's like Paul Newman levels of good.
No, yeah.
Like after we watched Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, I wanted to watch every Paul Newman movie
Yeah.
ever made. But I felt the same way. I was like, this is kind of he's kind of got a scene-stealing performance in this. And I really think that we need to maybe explore a little bit more of his filmography as well to understand some of that. Because like something like Close Encounters of the Third Kind is a pretty famous movie, but I think it came out at the same time as the original Star Wars because him and George Lucas had a bit of a rivalry, a friendly rivalry between that and Star Wars. And Star Wars just eclipsed that so hard. Like, it's almost like Dark City and Matrix, right? Coming out around the same time, and one overshadows the other. And it doesn't mean that the other one isn't bad or is bad, but it just something just overshadows it, and sometimes we lose great movies that way.
Yeah.
The third main character of the film is Quint, who's an older sailor, probably in his late 50s, and he believes that he's the only one capable of taking down the shark in the town.
Everyone else is going out with like small fishing boats, like just casual fishing boats, and they're all like going crazy, bringing too many people, like doing all these dumb, crazy things.
Yeah.
And he's the only like hardcore veteran of the town.
Yeah, and maybe has now it's almost like a cliche, but his intro into the film of like the screeching of the fingernails down the chalkboard. And then it's kind of him, everybody parts and he's kind of in the back like as this grizzly like man who just has seen and done things. Like it's an intro that is often copied, but never quite as iconic as his intro. It really does stand out amongst those. And that's something that I'm going to mention later, that I think there's a lot of aspects of this film that crop up in other films, but just the mixture of all of them are just so perfect in Jaws that we never quite see that again. So Quint is played by Robert Shaw, who unfortunately passed away a few years after the movie was released. So we really don't have much to talk about what you may know him from after the 70s. But he has some very notable performances. He played the villain Red Grant in the second James Bond movie alongside Sean Connery in From Russia with Love. He was one of the main characters in The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, which was remade in the last 10 years with John Travolta and Denzel Washington, which is actually a pretty decent movie.
I wonder what the original's like. It's probably good.
It's probably really good. Yeah. And he was also in The Deep, which is another movie adaptation based on a Benchley novel, which, as we'll talk about a bit later, this movie is based on a book that comes out not too much prior to the film. The last character...
I just wanted to say...
sorry.
He's Robert Shaw. He played a young Winston Churchill. I love any actor who can play Winston Churchill in any capacity is like at the top of my books.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to check that out.
I really want to watch that now.
Okay, so we have two characters left to talk about. The other notable character is Mayor Vaughn. Subsequent to Mayor Vaughn, there's like this trope almost of political leaders. And you know what? I'm going to relate this to a recent film, the don't look up style of politics that he kind of takes in this movie. Like, kind of as you said previously in the plot, like, he is more concerned about the business interests than the reality of what's happening. He's more interested in the perception of the town than the actual people within it.
Yeah, like he like gets his group of other business people together and says like, we can't close the beaches. I know you all have to make money, and he's obviously making money off it. And then they even get the doctor who did the autopsy of the very first attack. to falsify the report to say it could have been a boating accident. Yeah, so he's got some weight, and he's going to use it.
Well, and I think what's interesting about this portrayal as well, that you could maybe relate to politics of really any point in time, he believes in his own shtick, I think. Like, he's easily able to talk himself into this safe, like, it was just an accident, it was a boat, or, you know, there's no reason to fear the water there, because it could be this, that, or the other thing. Like, he's logical to a fault. Like, he uses logic as a weapon in this case, even if it's not logical, as long as it can fit his narrative. And I think that's a really interesting look at politics through a not something that you would consider to be a political movie, but in the current climate, it pops a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like people must have felt that back then too, and like almost everyone's experienced somebody who's like that. Like just like that one neighborhood person who's trying to like power trip, or someone at work.
Yeah, or like I said, there becomes a trope subsequent to this where I could compare to so many other literary characters. Like, I'm thinking right now, the character that comes to my mind is Big Jim Remy in the book Under the Dome by Stephen King.
Okay.
Yeah, very good novel. So-so TV show. Anyway, the last character that we have to quickly talk about is Bruce the Shark.
Yeah.
Not named Bruce in the movie, but belovingly named Bruce.
By the cast.
Yeah, by the cast. Bruce the Shark is pretty well written. They utilize the shark extraordinarily well in that they don't show the shark for a large part of the movie. And part of that's actually due to some limitations with the effects at this point in time.
It was a 1-ton, like, pneumatically moving, like, piece of art, basically.
Yeah, through the water. Like, this thing was in the water moving around. Not easy to build and design. There was actually 3 of them that they used, and I believe they lost one of them pretty much immediately after they started shooting.
They lost one, probably in the Atlantic?
Yep.
Yeah, wow.
So the director, we've already alluded to, it's Steven Spielberg. It's his second feature film, his first one being The Sugarland Express, which is a movie I haven't heard previously, but it's actually a crime film starring Goldie Hawn, and notable for the fact that both Steven Spielberg and Goldie Hawn are not known for crime films.
Interesting.
Yeah, so something that we might have to check out at some point.
Yeah.
And he was in his mid-20s when he created this film, so...
This is what jump-started his career.
Oh, absolutely.
And especially getting John Williams involved.
So, prior to this, John Williams is not as big of a composer as he is today. This is the film that... It's really interesting because you could argue that John Williams kickstarted Steven Spielberg's career, or you could argue Steven Spielberg kickstarted John Williams' career, and he probably won't be wrong with either argument.
Yeah, like definitely iconic for both.
Who's this movie for? This is a really interesting mashup of genres. The film is primarily, I would say, a thriller, and that's what it's primarily pegged on IMDb and Wikipedia and other film sites. But there's aspects of horror, and that's really a big part of the film. It's also a bit of an adventure film. Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if you've read The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway.
No, I haven't.
It's like, it has to take a lot of inspiration from that to a certain degree.
It does, yeah. I do think I saw that. This film has been written to death, so you and I have a lot of interesting stuff that we've come through over the last few days. But anyway, there's also comedic parts to the film as well. And
so well placed.
Very well placed, yeah. And we're going to talk about that specifically and how they were placed, and that was very intentionally by design, and something that we'll talk about in Legacy too, because I don't want to spoil too many things yet. There's Also some very tense sequences, like a thriller, but like white knuckle kind of thriller, like we compared to with The Thing earlier, where you're on the edge of your seat and you're not really sure what's going to happen. It's also a very Spielbergian movie, which in hindsight is kind of obvious, but without this movie, we wouldn't have that, like that idea, that genre, that tone. Because with how large and important this movie is, I think that gives Spielberg a little bit more creative freedom to do things the way that he wants to. And without this, we probably don't get something like Jurassic Park in the 90s, which is a really iconic film series, which is currently in a state of reboot right now, which I've only seen the first one of those. We don't need to talk about that new trilogy in too much detail. I think this has widespread appeal because of all of those different aspects that's incorporated in this film.
Like, this is, everybody should watch this.
Yes, because this is 100 movies to watch before you die kind of film.
Yeah, definitely. I'm still shocked that it took us this long. But like, there's so many good movies, so it's fair. But anybody could watch this. I guess like this was even like a huge like family movie. Back when it first came out, like there were kids watching it, which I think, of course, it was 1975. I don't know how young you let a kid watch this with all the like certain bits of gore and whatnot, but it's not that bad.
It holds up really well, right?
It does,
so it's those gory parts are still pretty intense.
Yeah.
Funny enough, like I remember back somebody that I grew up with, and we were probably like 7 or 8 years old, and his family was talking about how that was their family movie kind of thing, and my parents were like, you're not going over to their place anymore. Because my parents didn't let me watch Jaws as a kid because they were like, we don't want you to be afraid of going into the water. Jokes on them, I still don't like going into the water.
You're just like the sheriff.
Oh, I'm so like the sheriff. And that's probably where I draw those comparisons to, and I think he's that everyman that you can relate to a little bit.
Yeah, man, him sitting on that beach, watching everyone in the water the first time.
That's one of the most tense scenes of cinema. Period.
Yeah, like if I
I kept being like to Jess.
It was visceral. I felt it.
Yeah,
like
I kept being like to Jess, that person's gonna die. Nope, it's gonna be that person. No, here it comes. Oh, no. Yeah, it was very intense moment. I haven't yelled at a screen like that probably since the first time I watched The Thing.
Yeah.
And the effects, like we said, they hold up so well today's standards that and anybody like Kelvin could watch this movie.
100%. He should. I don't know if he will. But he should. We're gonna make him at some point.
We will sit him down. This is a movie that I could watch with somebody just to feel how I felt the first time I watched this movie.
Yeah, like introducing this is a movie that anybody should love to introduce to someone else. Yeah. If they have seen it, introduce it to someone who hasn't, because it's really that good.
It's maybe the most shareable movie that we have on this podcast to date.
Yeah.
Do you have any other who should watch this? I think we've pretty much said everybody and anybody, but
grizzled old fishermen who haven't been in from the sea yet, they might enjoy it. I don't know. Yeah, everybody should watch it.
Haven't felt the touch of a woman in 40 years.
That's not a quote, but I see. Like, yeah.
That's from something, probably.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's such a good movie. It's so good.
Yeah.
When to watch? This is obviously a blockbuster movie. I'm going to say, like, you even pick seasonality, watch it in the summer, like that blockbuster time of film.
Watch it on the 4th of July for Americans, or maybe Canada Day for...
Yeah, it's a 4th of July movie.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it
takes place over that
movie.
Weekend. So, yeah.
Slot it in right then. That's perfect. It's like the Die Hard of July 4th.
Yeah, exactly.
Along with, like, Independence Day, another great disaster movie, basically. You could probably call this a disaster movie as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I think, Saturday night, like, get a group of people together and say we're going to watch Jaws.
Yeah.
The other when to watch that I said, this is the first time I think I've said this on the podcast, But if you have any theaters in your area that show
Yes.
old films,
Yeah.
pay
Watch
attention
this.
to those. Because I think that this could be one of the coolest old movies to see on a big screen in a room full of other people.
Like, imagine being there in 1975.
Oh my god.
And everybody was talking about it. Like, it was a cultural phenomenon. It just blew up everything. And yeah, just being there, watching it for that first time, the opening night, would have been amazing.
I think the closest experience that I've ever had to being in a theater like that at that point in time would have been like Mad Max Fury Road on opening night
Yeah.
in like an IMAX theater, because that was a ride, and there was tension in the room.
Yeah.
Like, that's the closest I think I could get to relating to Jaws in the theater in 1975.
Yeah, I think just for being in like at a point of cultural phenomenon would be for me the seventh, like the final Harry Potter film, like watching that in
yes.
theaters, or maybe even like some of the newer Star Wars, but it's different now.
Yeah, I would say rather than Star Wars, maybe like the Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, same thing. So anybody who really loved their experience watching that in theaters, this is something that, like, go watch it in an old theater if you can, and like try to experience it that way.
This is the first movie that's made me start to think about paying attention to those movie theaters, because I think that I do want to start seeing some of these older movies on a big screen like that.
Yeah, man, we should start doing that. There's one in town here.
I'm going to start paying attention, and we'll go see something sometime.
Yeah.
Where to watch, currently streaming on Prime, and that's where I watched it through.
Same.
So-
But if it's in the future when you're listening to this, check out Just Watch.
Yeah, Just Watch is always our go-to for where we find where things that we want to watch are streaming, both
Yeah.
TV and movie.
Yes.
We still don't have a sponsor for it, but we're still plugging her anyway.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into themes, which means we're cutting it off here. We're as spoiler-free as possible for maybe the most spoiled movie of all time, or one of them. But if you've never seen this, please go watch this movie,
Yeah.
and come back to us after and revel in how great of a film this is.
Especially that one, I can't even say it. One more minute and I'll say it.
All right, cool. All right, we're back. Let's talk themes of Jaws, which is very interesting because, like we talked about before, there's some commentary to what was happening at the time. Because of how big of a movie this is, it's a movie that's been studied relentlessly over the last 50 years as well. So there's been a lot of famous comparisons that have been drawn to what was going on at the time as well.
Who's in office?
Um,
Was it the Watergate scandal?
It was right after the Watergate scandal. Scandal.
I think you were talking about sandals because the beach.
No, I was talking about Sandal Bergman.
Oh, okay, yeah. From Conan.
Yeah. The Watergate scandal is pretty clear and obvious there. And there's been a lot of academic journals and writing about that. I'm sure if you went to film school and ever studied Jaws, you would have studied Watergate probably. And how each of the one of the three main characters represent different people or ideas within the Watergate scandal as well, interestingly enough.
Because there's some people who definitely wanted business to keep going.
Mm-hmm. I don't know enough about the details of the analysis for that to really talk about that. I just know that that is the big comparison. There's kind of a social class and maybe even caste kind of comparison here, and how Quint is kind of like a more lower class person, and he's not relied on at first, but he's the guy who's like working class. He's got that grit
He's like
to him.
the backbone.
Yeah, and the person that we need to help fix the problem. Whereas Hooper, on the flip side, where there's that tension between them, is he comes from like like a civilized like technology and like university like learned background, and so there's a big contrast there.
Well, just to go into another theme, like man versus nature.
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
is like so comparable to Moby Dick.
Oh, absolutely.
Like this is basically the modern Moby Dick.
Yeah, which interestingly enough, like I've read the spark notes of Moby Dick. I've never read the novel itself, but I think we're ready for somebody to adopt Moby Dick into a really interesting film.
Yeah, that would be an amazing epic.
Yeah,
like
maybe starring like the guy from Gladiator.
Russell Crowe.
Yeah, Russell Crowe. I think Russell
as the
Crowe.
old man.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, as Captain. What's his name?
Captain Ahab.
Ahab. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that could be a really interesting film.
But Jaws is what we have right now compared to Moby Dick.
Yep.
So, and like, Moby Dick was absolutely huge, and so was this. So completely, like, the themes there are so similar. It works.
And like you said as well, like it's human beings invading on another territory. There's the comparison about like, you know, like you said, man versus nature as well, but as well the like anti-consumerist, anti-corporate feel of this movie as well. That pushback against profits at all costs.
Yeah, like human greed. Like what does it get you?
Yeah,
human greed compared to environmental or the environment.
Yeah, an environmental encroachment, maybe even environmental destruction. Actually, environmental destruction is kind of interesting here because, like you mentioned earlier, we get a scene where all of the angry village people go out on all these boats, and it's
they're
comical.
not angry. I don't think they're greedy.
Yeah,
because
they're greedy.
Want the
fame and the glory, and I think it's like
$3,000.
Yeah, $3,000, 1975. That's at least $10,000 today.
Yeah.
Probably even more after 2020 too.
Yeah.
But and they're comically hunting anything that remotely looks like a shark. They've got like when they pull that shark up, I don't know if you noticed, but there's like shots in the shark, there's like hooks in the shark, there's a freaking arrow in the shark, and they're fighting over who caught the shark.
Yeah, who gets the glory, and then they all get in. And that was a real shark that they brought up from Florida.
Yeah.
Because this was filmed at Martha's Vineyard, because there isn't a real Amity and it's not on an island like shooting. Yeah, so they didn't actually have sharks around Martha's Vineyard, so they had to go get one, and it was actually like fished and caught for the movie, I'm pretty sure, or it was just fished and caught and they bought it and brought it up. But yeah, cool little fact, real shark there. It looked so real. I was like, that's a real shark.
Yeah, apparently very decomposing at that point. Pretty disgusting to film around, smell-wise.
Yeah, I wonder if they actually cut it in the scene.
That's a good question. I didn't see that online. Ugh, that would have been so gross. I don't want to think about that. I think those are the main big themes of the movie that I wanted to touch on. So let's move into always my favorite part of the episode, effects and filming. Something interesting right off the bat early in the movie where we get the first victim of the shark, Chrissy, after they discover her remains on the beach. The fingers in the sand look very real, and that's because they are real fingers. They actually buried one of the female crew members in the sand with only her arm exposed because Steven Spielberg didn't like the look of like a fake arm.
Yeah. And honestly, that set the tone for the suspense. Like that. Like we saw, so first of all, the effects and filming of her actually dying was pretty cool. They used, because she's getting thrashed around the top of the
she's getting
the water,
moved around very quickly,
and that's the only thing that I think I was like, like no shark would do that, just dragging her around the top. It would grab her and go deep or something. But just the way they did that set the tone for how intense like the deaths might be. But then seeing the reaction of the people who found the body. So we see, I think, the sheriff's deputy, he's the one who finds it, and then the sheriff.
And he's like gagging because he's like that small town that, again, and the trope almost of like the out of water, like small town. He's always grown up and lived here. He's never seen any of the horrors of the outside world. And this makes him physically ill to see this. He
finds this like just completely torn apart body. And he looks like he has the 1,000-yard stare, and he's just out of it. He's like he can barely communicate or anything. Yeah. And then you see Sheriff Brody walk up, and he's shocked. Yeah. And he's seen some shit already. He sees this, and he's like, oh shit. Yeah. Like that was like an oh shit moment for everyone watching and in the scene.
As a side note here, another small detail that I really love about this film is how they do the show not tell. Yeah. They do a really great job of making you feel like this is a small town. And the point that I want to bring up is the karate chopping menaces, karate chopping white picket fences, and how that's the biggest problem in the town. Yeah. I laugh so hard.
Like the old lady admin person at
their secretary.
She like she's just going on and on about it, and he's like, that's when he's typing on that old typewriter, like shark attack.
Yeah. And he's like trying to contain his like panic almost, and thinking like, we have to close the beach, we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to protect the people of the town. Yeah. And she's just like, you got to do something about those white picket fence karate choppers.
And then we see the guy whose fence gets karate chopped, and he's like, what are you going to do about this? And and the sheriff has to rush off to like the hardware store to get a beach closed sign because they don't have one. Yeah. They've never needed one. So like that all adds to that.
Yeah, and it really does a great job of capturing the feel of that small town community, which we see in other films. And like, I grew up in a small town, not a tourist town, but a small town, so I can kind of understand growing up in that sort of environment. But I really appreciated those little details and the way that it painted the portrait of this film and the setting.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned before, Quint and Hooper had a lot of on-screen tension, and the actors Shaw and Dreyfuss actually hated each other while they filmed together, and they just argued constantly on set of the film. And I think that really adds to that tension.
Yeah, you can see it in so many moments between them. But it's amazing that they were able to like overcome that at that point where they're drinking and singing that. The two songs that Quint sings are great. But that one song where they're...
Yeah, we don't get many like cool seafarer singing moments in film.
Yeah, there's the farewell and adieu, you fair Spanish ladies. That's the one that Quint is repeating throughout the film. But then there's show me the way to go home. So in that scene where they're comparing battle scars, you can tell that they connected. Yeah, obviously, absolutely. Like apparently they hated each other in real life, but they were such good actors, or they got so into it that they actually like. I saw that connection like happen on screen. I was like, oh, that's awesome.
For two people who hated each other so much in real life, they did have some really great on-screen chemistry. Yeah. A lot of the film itself, like 25% approximately, is shot at water level to give you the sense that you're treading water in there. And that ratchets up the tension throughout. Like, I was trying to think, and I haven't thought of another movie that does that, but there are other films that put you in that perspective that adds to that tension.
What I would say, Harikiri,
Yes.
That one, so they use a tilted face angle from below. When we watched that, I looked up like what was the purpose of how they filmed those scenes.
Right.
And anything that isn't like center, like the right perspective of someone like standing on ground, just adds so much to the suspense, and like something's off. You know something's off. And Annabelle actually picked that up. At one point she was saying like why is the camera so low?
Right.
And I was like, it's because like it's like we're adding so much tension. You feel like that's perfect to say that you're treading water, because it's so much lower than you would expect in it. Like you've never seen something else shot that low, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Spielberg is just great with camera angles.
I can't remember. There was another film that I was doing research on. I don't even remember if it was for the podcast, to be honest, but they filmed a lot of their perspective from a child's point of view. It wasn't The Iron Giant, was it?
Yes, it was. It was. Okay. Yeah.
Animated, but still filmed from that perspective of a child. And again, we see the importance of where you place the camera in shooting and eviscerating the feelings that you want to make the audience feel at any given moment in your film, and how important that is. There's so much that goes into movies that you have to step back sometimes to really appreciate those little and acknowledge them to really appreciate them.
Yeah, like people might not know why they felt so much like heightened anxiety in the moments when Sheriff Brody is feeling that feeling.
Yeah.
But all of that adds to it so much.
Yeah. Cool other like filming moment when they're on the boat in the evening. We see a shooting star go over the boat, and I saw that one. That looked really authentic, and I looked it up, and that was an actual shooting star.
It wasn't.
That went by while they recorded it.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, it was.
That was the biggest like Easter egg that people were talking about for years. And they more recently they've done some analysis, and they like really zoomed in on the star, and like the biggest detractor against that theory that it was a real shooting star, because you actually see it twice.
Yes.
Yeah. So I saw it and I was like, oh shit, this is that movie where there's a real shooting star. And then I started researching it as soon as the movie was done. I was like, is that shooting star real?
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to know if we got to the bottom of it. So those scenes were shot during the day. So that wouldn't have been possible. They downshifted, or like they shifted the lighting and everything so that it looked like it was shot at night. Yeah. But it was actually shot during the day, because it would have been
so much more difficult.
Yeah, they were literally on the Atlantic shooting all of that. So I'm sorry to burst your bubble. I got mine burst. Everybody from 1975 eventually has to get theirs burst, because that was so talked about.
Yeah.
Like, it's all over. It's in like lists of like crazy things that happened during this movie, and but I think it's been detracted.
On another similar note to camera work, the biggest jump scare of the film for me was the head floating down from the boat.
It was the whole body, but the head shows up in the window.
And I wasn't expecting it at all. Like, at all.
Yeah, that was like that was such a cool character developing moment for Hooper too, because like he's showing that he's like completely, like, he knows sharks. So he knows that boat is going to be fine to go dive under. And then so like I felt his confidence that he would be fine. They would just get some information, and like that lulls you into this state of like, he knows what he's doing,
right?
But then you're like, but it's Jaws, you know something's gonna happen. But then it was just the dead body with the eye missing. Like, that was perfect, like a perfectly placed jump scare. He added this in after, so Spielberg was like, I need one more like scare after he showed like the final product basically to test audiences,
right? And
then they went back and like filmed that with that, like he added that in. Is that what you were gonna say?
Kind of. It's actually in the same realm of topic. As a side note, how do we become test audiences?
Yeah, I know, right?
Like, at some point, if our podcasts ever get big enough, like, I kind of hope that they reach out to us.
Yeah.
Be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty prestigious.
Yeah.
But
hit us up, Steven. We're waiting.
Steven. That'll make my life, as a side note, if that ever happens. But anyway, so that moment, they add that in, but Steven Spielberg still wanted the shark to get the biggest scream from the audience when it kind of appears at the behind the boat.
Yeah.
What he said about that scene, or those scenes, and how he filmed them and added both of those jump scares in, is that the lesson he learned from that is that a movie really can only do like one big scare moment. And after you've hit the audience with that, they're kind of on their guard after that. They know that you could do something else like that. So it's that one big moment that's what you have. So you have to pick your moment. Basically.
Yeah, because that was like the perfect jump scare, and then the full reveal, it wasn't as much of a jump scare, it was just like a terror moment, I guess.
Like, so, it was just like, whoa, the shark's there, kind of thing. Yeah. But your body's already tense at that point.
Yeah. That body in the water was the only shot, I think, filmed in a pool.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, another technical detail.
Yeah.
Besides that.
Other related technical detail. I'm just firing these off the interconnectedness here. So I mentioned before that there were 3 sharks made, all named Bruce.
Yeah.
And each one kind of had their own unique functions. They each cost approximately $250,000 to make.
Shit.
Yeah. So that's where the budget was going. Totally worth it.
Yeah.
They're so good. Even the water. Else. I was like, that is a shark in the water with them right there.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about one of our famous scenes in the film, the story of the U.S. Indianapolis.
Yes.
So this is based on a real historic event that happened, the sinking of the USS Indianapolis, I believe off the waters of Japan or somewhere in that area of the world.
It was back from the island of Tinian to Leyte.
Again, I'm somebody who finds like disasters really interesting, and the tragedy of human beings it's just fascinating to me.
Everyone's drawn to it to different degrees, but like it's something that everyone like wants to hear about, kind of, and they played this scene so perfectly.
Yeah, he really draws you in. He talks like Quint is he's pretty outspoken, but he dials it back in this scene, and he talks like almost at a whisper of the story of him surviving after the sinking of the U.S. Indianapolis.
And like even the way they introduced it, like they were just going back and forth drinking about like their battle scars and everything. Like right before this, there's a super funny scene. This is another well-placed comedic moment where Brody asks Quint, like, what's that one? And Quint's like, what? He's like, that one there on your arm. He's like, oh, that's a tattoo. I got that removed. And then Hooper was like, don't tell me, mother.
Yeah.
And like they just like roar with laughter. Hooper like finds another one or something, and he's like, Mr. Hooper, that's the USS Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And then
it gets quiet because the other two know the story.
Well, Hooper knows it. He's like, you were on the Indianapolis? And then Brody, again, fish out of water in almost everything.
Right.
He's like, what happened? And then Quint goes right into it.
And this is what actually brought that point in history back into the minds of Americans. That was kind of lost at that point in time.
Because it was the ship that delivered the bomb to Hiroshima. The plane flew off that ship.
I didn't know that.
That's in the story.
That's, again, like something that I think could be done really well in film or in
As
like
its own movie.
yeah, like or like a 6-part mini series or something like that. It reminds me again. That's why I thought of The Terror after watching this. That's why, or I'm just thinking of like The Long Walk, Stephen King novel. And it's that survival and that will to survive that fascinates me, and what people, the lengths that people will go to survive in these extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah, that whole story, Quint talks about his friend. He sees him bobbing in the waves, and then eventually he realizes that he'd been bitten in half below the waist.
A really dark moment in the story.
And foreshadowing.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of foreshadowing sprinkled throughout.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a little cool one.
If you're interested in that part of history at all, absolutely recommend you going back and reading the backstory. There's a couple of documentary type TV episodes based on that. I think I've seen part of one at some point, but it'd be something that'd be interesting in going back and revisiting. Like,
especially for Shark Week.
Yes.
Because this is a quote from him. So 1,100 men went into that water. 316 men came out, and the sharks took the rest.
Yeah.
June 29th, 1945.
And there's various reports about what actually happened during that day or two or three while they were on the water. I read a report that 2 people from the accident said that the sharks really only attacked the people who were dead for the most part and took the dead, whereas maybe some people would get bit while they were swimming. But sharks are, I guess, generally risk avoiders, and so if you're suddenly kicking, the shark's going to probably back away in that case, and take the easy meals
Okay.
on the water. But
Did you catch any other foreshadowing moments?
the obvious one was the air tanks.
Yeah.
That was pretty obvious. And I actually didn't know that Jaws was going to die from that, or maybe I did way back in like the small parts of my brain, the recess of my brain. I was gonna say that, but I was like, is that right?
Recesses for kids.
That was the obvious one. What other ones did you find?
Annabelle thought she had one when Quint stabs the machete into the side of the boat.
Oh, okay.
She's like, oh, they're going to kill the shark with it. She's like, that's classic foreshadowing. And so...
missing the point of, like, how much they focused on the tanks.
Yeah. But she might have saw that, but didn't say anything.
True.
But she did see the machete. And we do see Quint trying to stab. He stabs it a few times with the machete.
Yeah.
But that's it.
That might be a nod toward the original book, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the book, the shark dies from extensive wounds.
Okay.
So I'll fill you in. Like, I actually read the synopsis of the book, and at the end, the shark's coming for Brody. He's actually killed the other 2, both Hooper and Quint at this point. And as the shark's closing in on him, it just dies and falls to the bottom of the ocean. It's like, it's kind of anticlimactic, to be honest.
Yeah, shit. I was so happy that Hooper lived, but at the same time, it would have been so much more impactful if he didn't. I don't know where I fall, like, in really, like, which one I prefer.
It becomes more of a buddy movie, having them both survive and swim and have a chuckle
Hooper
as they
come
get
back for Jaws 2?
No.
Now I don't even want to watch.
I think he was tied up in other stuff at that point. Maybe even that rom-com I was talking about.
Oh, so. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
You might say he was caged in.
That was bad.
Yeah.
Actually, point about that.
Yes.
I did some research on when the shark cages were invented. They were invented... Give me a second. I've lost it. It was in like 20 years or so before by Jacques Cousteau, actually.
Oh, unreal.
Yeah. Huh. Cool connection there.
Yeah. The shark cage looked so aluminum when they were moving it around.
It looked like it was like going to break. Like it didn't look like it was going to be holding sharks back.
Like they weren't like showing that it was like a proven thing or anything.
Yeah.
But Hooper had confidence in it. What does Quint call it? He's like, "What do you got there? A shower or like a portable shower?" Or he says something else. He like makes fun of it at the beginning, saying that won't hold up against our shark.
Yeah.
And this is before they know how truly big this shark is.
And then we get you're gonna need a bigger boat line.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was gonna get repeated. And each time I was like, nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Brody is like so terrified of the shark at that point. Like he's dead serious. He's like, we should go back to shore.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, just the time when Brody backs into the cabin and Quint is like doing a bunch of stuff. It's like starting to flood and he's looking for something, and he backs in and he said like the perfect timeline, like when he's like fully serious, he's like, we're gonna need a bigger boat.
Yeah.
Like the way he backs in and is just completely horrified, like scared, that was perfect. Mm-hmm. And then you know when there's a little fire in the cabin and Quint is like Brody, put that out. Just the way Quint is so calm in these crazy scenarios,
right,
makes you know that he's seen some shit.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's before we find out that he was on the Indianapolis. The characters in this were so well done.
Yeah, they all had interesting backstories
and depth.
And depth, and we learned about them over time. Like it wasn't spoon-fed to us. Yeah. We just get little tidbits here and there into the understanding of how their minds work.
Yeah.
The last effects and filming point that I want to make before we move on, because we do have to move on at some point.
Yeah.
The book itself is written pretty drastically different than the film, and Steven Spielberg really edited the screenplay because he said that all of the characters in the book were extraordinarily unlikable. The other point of the book was there's a lot of subplots and a lot of like stuff going on in the town that's just kind of unnecessary to the story. So he really wanted to focus in on the story of Jaws, basically. After he had gotten to the screenplay to a pretty good point, he looked at it and he went, I really want to add some comedic elements to this as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So he gave it to the writer Carl Gottlieb and said, take a look at this. Let me know if there's any comedy that you could add or comedic elements that you think that you can see in this script and where you can add that. He ended up becoming a crucial part of the script writing and did significant rewrites of the script. Basically, at the point of time when they started filming, they were like nowhere near having the script ready. Yeah. So every night they'd get together, like the actors and the crew, and they would talk about what they were going to be filming the next day and throw out like ideas and quotes and stuff like that. And it became like a really like close-knit group of people all working collaborative kind of group, with Gottlieb kind of at the center doing all of these rewrites and adjustments. Another
little thing that probably came up during that kind of session with the crew is that they had a small tugboat that was bringing them out or something like that, and somebody just offhanded was like, we're gonna need a bigger boat, and then that became
a joke set.
With all the set. Yeah.
And then eventually they did end up using that and becoming one of the most iconic quotes of the entire film.
So that collaborative element that they added in with all of that like late night bullshitting and figuring out for the next day, that probably added so much to the film.
A very, very interesting take on how to build a film.
Oh, one more.
Okay, go ahead.
The lady whose kid died, her slap, she couldn't really fake a slap.
Yeah.
It was 100% real. And
it was real.
They did 17 takes of it. And his face was hurting so bad.
Yeah.
And then, this is completely random, but years later, after, like, it was like a decade or two later after the filming of this, I forget her child's name in the movie. She was in a random restaurant in like somewhere in the States, and she saw that there was a sandwich on the menu named after the child, like her child in the movie.
Yeah.
And she said something to the waiter or something, and they went and got the owner. The owner of that restaurant was the kid.
Yeah.
The kid actor.
Crazy how
Yeah.
small of a world it is that something like
And,
that
like,
could happen.
What, like, they had no reason to connect for like the past 20 years, and they just randomly happened. So funny.
Yeah, very cool. I really enjoy that story as well. Okay, we gotta move on. There's
fine.
so many crazy effects and filming stories that we could talk about.
Everyone who hasn't watched this still, like, go watch it, because there's so many cool things about this movie.
Absolutely. Let's talk about score. Because it's so
essential.
important to this film.
Yeah.
John Williams, it's the score that made him famous, put him on the map. The dun 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 is like,
Dun,
yeah, one of the most memorable scores of all time. I bet you I could like pull a bunch of kids from like any young age group and be like, what is this from? And all of them would say Jaws, and none of them have seen Jaws before.
They might not know it's Jaws, but if you told them to, the Baby Shark song ruined it maybe for the youngest generation. But like, if you were to ask them like, what sound would you say like a shark does in the water, they would do that 100%.
And so John Williams, this quote is really cool. It's him talking about like how he came up with it and what it signifies to him. So he said that the theme is, it's grinding away at you just as a shark would do, instinctual, relentless, and unstoppable. It's cool. It's just cool. It's ranked the sixth greatest score by the American Film Institute of all time. Absolutely deserves it. It would be cool as a side note to do an episode like pinpointing something particular about a movie and like talking about like the top 3 movies of that or something like that.
Because obviously that main theme is like so central, but he does change it up a bit as like throughout the film. So he has other points he tried to invoke more of a pirate music sound,
right? Probably
closer to like times when Quint is around. And then
not like Pirates of the Caribbean.
No, but like he added like a primal but fun and entertaining element to it, which is like perfect. Like that's a perfect description of almost the whole movie if they added in a little bit of fear. But yeah, like the primal fear but fun and entertaining. And
interestingly enough, it's the lack of score that's used well as well throughout the film. For example, you kind of become accustomed, especially in the first act of the movie, where the music tips you off that the shark is coming. And so later in the film, especially when we get the big jump where the shark is revealed behind Brody, we don't get that song to tip us off that it's coming kind of thing, right? So very well done as well there. What are you looking at?
Okay, it's just the tiniest little scene when Brody's sitting on the beach at the very beginning, and there's been one attack, but the townspeople have said no, don't close the beaches. He's sitting there watching everyone. Then that little old man sits in front of him
and starts talking, and then you see like little parts of his vision.
Yeah. And then he says, "That's some bad hat, Harry." There's this production company called That's Some Bad Hat, Harry. And they did a really famous other movie. It's set at the end of The Usual Suspects. So
cool.
They had stuff to do with The Usual Suspects, X-Men, and House. I've watched House before, and at the end, when it shows the production companies, it's like, "That's some bad hat, Harry." So that's where that quote's from.
That's where a lot of production companies get their names from, like
just little quotes like
little quotes or references, like Rob Reiner's production company is called Castle Rock Productions, a reference to Stephen King's world after he made Stand By Me. So cool there. The score is phenomenal. It's everything that you could expect it to be and more while you're watching the film. there's a nostalgia to it while you're watching it, like just seeing it in its original intended, where it's originally intended to be listened to, is really cool and fascinating and exciting.
They really like they put like music theory behind it too, using they went from like a concert pitch E natural and then move up to a concert pitch F, then it moves down again in like a half step fluctuation. They purely made it for suspense, and it works so well.
Yeah.
It's just so iconic.
Absolutely. Okay, look back at the times. I have a couple notes here, and actually the notes are just casting decisions, like stuff that almost happened. The part of Brody almost went to Paul Newman, which would have been he's too big of a star, and Steven Spielberg himself said he's too big of a star for this. Because and this is actually the prime example. Charlton Heston was the other character or actor who was considered for the role of Brody. But the reason why I went to Scheider instead of somebody like Heston was because Heston at this point is known as his characters are like the save the day type heroes. And that takes away some of the tension.
And it would have given too much away,
Spielberg wanted a lesser known actor so that you really don't know as the audience if the shark could potentially be victorious and whether or not the shark has a chance. Like it's like early days Game of Thrones where any character at any point in time can die. Obviously the later seasons there's a lot of plot armor, but the plot armor idea is something that Steven Spielberg thought about when he went into this. And that actually burned a bridge with Charlton Heston and Steven Spielberg. Charlton Heston, not a big fan of Spielberg after that.
That
Very
happens.
offended by that. Hooper also almost went to John Vaught or Jeff Bridges.
Yes, I saw Jeff Bridges,
Yeah. Very interesting decision. I think that Dreyfuss was the right person for the role, but I really love me some Jeff Bridges, so it makes me think about what he would have done in the role.
He could have done it, for sure.
Yeah.
But it just works so well with who we got, so.
Absolutely. And then Legacy kind of tied in with Look Back at the Times. This was the highest grossing film of all time in 1975, but only held it for 2 years because then we get Star Wars in 77. Over 67 million people in the U.S. went to see the film when it was released in 1975.
Just
it was
unprecedented.
Yeah, it was legitimately unprecedented. It was the first summer blockbuster. And today you take that for granted, that summer is the time of year where the blockbusters are released. However, prior to 1975, they were actually usually released around Christmas time because the studios had the thinking that people would want to be outdoors and being active in the summer, and it's hard to get people's attention towards watching film. So it was just a stroke of luck that the film itself got pushed back to the summer and then blew up the idea of the summer blockbuster from there. And as well, it's just a blockbuster in general. Without this film, like blockbusters, film in general would have been different. Like this is a Godfather level moment in movie history.
For sure. Like it influenced movies in such a big way. Like The Thing influenced just one little section of movies, but this was like a whole cultural thing. Like people were afraid to go swimming after watching this. Like that sparked a fear. Like everyone had, like not everyone, but like a lot of people have a fear of water, but like imagine like how much it was expanded upon with this.
And this film kind of sets the tone for mainstream man versus animal nature films. We get a lot of movies that come out after this. Looking at some of the names here, there was Orca, Grizzly, Alligator, and Piranha, which is a kind of almost a satire of Jaws. And actually, Spielberg said that it's basically the best Jaws ripoff ever made. I haven't seen the original. There's also Piranha 3D that came out in the last 10, 15 years as well.
They did Jaws 3D too, and Piranha 3D. Mm-hmm. Anaconda was one from our time period. Like
Snakes on a Plane.
Almost.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of fits.
Not only that, but the tone of the film is pretty integral to other like horror films as well. Like the obvious one here is Alien, which actually was pitched as Jaws in space.
Yeah, I think I saw that as like a tagline, unofficially.
Actually, as a side note, I should bring up the taglines for the other Jaws movies because there's some really famous taglines for the sequels.
That's funny. Just another little... So this is a reference from Back to the Future 2, which came out, I think, like a fair time after this, but it's
like
still...
the early mid-80s.
Yeah, it was like, mid-80s. Back to the Future 2. And there's... we see, like, Jaws... number like
Jaws like 67.
Yeah, something like that. And Marty's like, the shark still looks fake, and he's in the future.
Yeah, Jaws 19, I think it was. Yeah, it was Jaws 19. One of the sequels, I believe it's Jaws 3D. The sequel's tagline was, "This time it's personal." And Jaws 19 in Back to the Future it says, "This time it's really, really personal."
Yeah. And it's directed by Max Spielberg.
Yeah. The tagline for the second movie is, "Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water."
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
That's iconic.
Yeah.
Whoever came up with that idea in the marketing department deserves a gold star.
The poster for Jaws was just instantly iconic as well.
Absolutely. Jaws, I can't understate this or overstate this enough. I don't know which one I'm supposed to mean, but I can't state this enough. Is Jaws changed how we as audiences received movies and viewed movies and how they were marketed to us, because Jaws was one of the first movies to get like a major marketing push towards audiences, whereas previous to this, what would happen is Hollywood would release movies on a much smaller basis to only a smaller number of theaters, and they would build their viewership by word of mouth, and they would find who their niche is. And maybe that's a little bit of marketing and how the marketing departments maybe use technology to learn how people go about their lives and how they view movies and how movies impact different people. But they basically just like let it out into the world and just saw what happened, and this changed that in such a big way. And now that's why we have these massive movies that you get blitz marketing campaigns prior to going, and that everybody goes and sees. This was like the first big, or one of the first big movie phenomena that, you know, you'd be at the water cooler talking about this movie probably for a week after watching it. And that becomes very much ingrained in society after that, and studios looking for that next big film. The other smaller bit here, we've obviously brought up Shark Week earlier. I thought that Shark Week was created as a response to Jaws to kind of teach the American public about the misconceptions that Jaws presents, like as sharks being these monsters of the sea that are bloodthirsty, looking to kill humans wherever possible. However, not the case. Jaws or Shark Week was kind of started independently in 1988, like 13 years later.
Okay.
And the other point that I want to make is, this is something from my adolescence. The show Mythbusters did an entire episode around the movie Jaws and what aspects of the movie they did correct about what a great white is capable and not capable of. And they tested a lot of those different things, which is kind of neat. For example, like they tested the ramming speed of a shark and if it could do that kind of damage on a boat. And it can technically, it just hasn't ever really been documented. Like,
kind of neat. Why would they? Unless it was a pure accident.
Yeah, like there's stories of whales doing stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
the story behind Moby Dick, which I was actually going to bring up earlier and I forgot. But the real story behind Moby Dick and the people who survived the attack of that sperm whale and then spent months out at sea, they had to like eat people who died while they were out there. Fascinating story. Absolutely recommend reading into it. That's again one of those man versus natures, and what will you do when pushed to the absolute limits? And that stuff just really, again, really fascinates me. Something that I've read up on previously.
Love to check that out.
Sequels, prequels, and reboots. So we talked about the book a little bit. It was written by Peter Benchley in 1974. So it came out instantly a bestseller, 44 weeks on the bestseller list. Very popular, and the studios instantly snapped this up, picked Spielberg for director on this. However, the book itself has very mixed reviews. The reason being is that there's a lot of prose within the novel, and I had to Google that because my English isn't great. Apparently what prose means is written in a very plain tone. There's not a lot of like literary
Devices,
devices used.
Like it's not poetic. It's like there's poetic and then there's prose, and there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah, like I imagine it being like a very literal novel, not really painting a great picture of the setting maybe, but I haven't read the whole book. I haven't written the novel. And there's also a lot of problems with the characterization of the characters, and that's something that we mentioned previously, is that Steven Spielberg found most of the characters pretty unlikable, so he did some pretty extensive rewrites in that department. However, it was a book that critics really loved the suspense part, and so that's what Spielberg obviously focused on with the movie.
Yeah, he did a great job pulling that book apart and turning it into like really refining it into this masterpiece.
Yeah. So a couple of notes on some of the changes that they made. The idea of Quint being a World War II USS Indianapolis survivor was added to the movie, which is great addition. You and I have talked about that being one of our highlights of the movie. Mm-hmm. They changed the shark's death to be from a scuba tank instead of or like the explosion of the scuba tank from extensive wounds.
Yeah.
And Hooper dying along with Quint, which again, I liked having both of them survive.
Yeah, especially like the little paddle back, as they were like they used the barrels to paddle back.
Yeah. And then Peter Benchley himself has written several other novels that have nautical themes in them, which I mentioned previously. The Deep, which was adopted, The Island, Beast, and White Shark. So if you're interested in diving into him as a writer, those are some options that you have.
Swim right through those.
Yeah.
Dive in.
So sequels of the movie. Definitely not received as well as Jaws, the original Jaws. Basically, actually, Steven Spielberg himself said in 1975 that making a sequel to anything is just a cheap carny trick. So he's never been a fan of the sequel. Yeah. And he really hasn't made a ton of sequels over his careers. Like,
no.
I actually don't know if he was involved in Jaws, or not Jaws, Jurassic Park 2 and 3. I gotta imagine he was his producer at the very least, but he doesn't. If you look at his filmography, there isn't a lot of sequels there.
Well, Indiana Jones.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Wait, is he Avatar?
No, that's James Cameron.
Oh yeah, all right. Like the Indiana Jones ones, I think are great.
Oh,
like
they're so good.
Like each one is better than the last, and like they're all.
Not critically,
no.
But Raiders of the Lost Ark is rated one of the highest movies of all time. However, I do really enjoy every single Indiana Jones movie. Yeah. Except for the fourth one, probably.
Yeah, the newest, like the remake, whatever.
But there's a new one of those coming out soon. We're off on a massive tangent here. So, Jaws 2, we talked about the tagline for that. So, Scheider came back for that to play Brody again. It's regarded the best of the sequels, which not a high bar for that. Jaws 3D has none of the original actors and is apparently leans very hard on the 3D aspect. I think it's borderline unwatchable by
Yeah,
today's standards.
Probably. 'Cause
There was
3D
a fourth.
never really worked.
Yeah.
There was a fourth?
There's a fourth Jaws called Jaws the Revenge. And Lauren Gary, who I didn't mention before, who plays Ellen Brody, actually returns for this.
Huh.
And so this is the film where it said the tagline is "This time it's personal."
Okay.
And the reason for that is because she thinks that the sharks are after her and their family, and that's what the whole movie is centered around. Because I think she moves away or something like that. Michael Caine's in this movie, but it's considered one of the worst movies ever made.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Well, probably, yeah.
So we're gonna watch it at some point.
Yeah. We'll have like the worst movies ever made month.
Absolutely. So those are the sequels. There's a lot of spin-offs of the shark genre that
Sharknado.
Sharknado, obviously a more recent one. The Blue, or what's
Deep
that
Blue?
one? Deep Blue, yeah. Deep Blue's one. That's where the sharks are like have like AI or something in their brains, right?
Oh no, you're thinking
enhanced.
of Austin Powers.
No,
with the lasers on their freaking heads.
I think that's based on something though.
That's just making fun of James Bond, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, maybe Deep Blue Sea. I want to say that there's a they make sharks. They're doing research to help fight Alzheimer's.
Oh,
and so they enhance their brains.
And then they get sentient, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Hey, why are we down here in the water? Let's go eat some people."
Weird, but anyway, there's some interesting stuff. Not good stuff, but interesting stuff that comes out of this.
On that note, also, like, there was a shitty impact of Jaws on
we didn't talk
shark
about that in
populations.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, fishing for sharks became much more popular in the, like, decade after.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long that continued, but North American fishing wasn't really centered around sharks at all, but then it became more of a sport fishing thing. And but then other parts of the world obviously do like the shark fin soup and everything. So, and I think Jaws was such an international phenomenon too that it probably impacted some stuff there.
Oh, absolutely. And
we-
that was something that Peter Benchley, the writer of the original novel, actually really regretted, and over his lifetime spent a lot of time working on conservation and put a lot of money into that, and was recognized for that over his lifetime.
Yeah, so that's good. Like, it's good that he learned so much more after that he was able to work trying to fix like, he introduced something that was probably already there, but it did become more popular, so.
But there we have the internet now, and everybody knows everything, and nothing fake could ever come out of the internet.
Exactly.
So, yeah, we all know better, all of us, about everything. And some people really want to tell you about it too. All right, let's talk personal reviews and the partner factor. You and I have been like talking this up for the last hour and a half at this point. You obviously know where both of us stand. This movie is so good. This goes in probably
so much
my top
better
20.
than what I thought.
So same.
Yeah,
same.
like same with Annabelle too.
Yeah.
Like, she was shocked at how good it was. I was shocked. Like, I knew it was gonna be good, but I didn't know how good.
Yeah.
Like, I thought Conan was good, but like I knew even when I first watched it like 10 years ago that it wasn't that good, but it was really fun.
Yeah.
But this was fun and suspenseful and so well put together that I gained more respect for Spielberg. Watching one of his biggest first ones. Like, I didn't know that it was that good.
I think I will go back watching other Spielberg movies in a different lens, with a little bit of a different level of respect to them, like more respect for them. After this. Yeah,
because I've been talking about this. I think the biggest thing is that thought it was just an old movie for so long.
Yes.
Probably growing up, like, oh yeah, like our parents loved it. Sure, I'm sure it was good in 1975, but no, it holds up. That was what blew me away.
Yeah, it holds up better than any other movie that we've watched on this podcast pre-1980s, bar none.
Yeah.
It blows my mind that this is almost 50 years old.
And that I think the writing is what makes it like that good. No, all the elements come together so well that it's shocking that it's 1975 when this came out.
Yeah. And you mentioned Annabelle. Jess also absolutely loved it. Fully engaged throughout the whole movie, and that says a lot, actually, because with COVID, like, she's been struggling to watch things, and this is the first time since her and I have had COVID that she's like been fully engaged in something.
Yeah, and this is a movie that Annabelle was not expecting to like more than what I wasn't expecting. I thought I would like it, but she was like, the pacing is actually really good.
Yes.
And that's that's her biggest detractor. So that's like a 10 out of 10 for her.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty damn high on my list too.
Yeah. Like, she was like, shit's always getting done. Like, there's always something like happening.
Yes.
Or like leading them forwards, kind of.
That's something big about this legacy of this movie too, because this is kind of at that point in time where movies change and pivot and studios see what potential movies have to and directors as well, to pull like the emotions out of audiences, and they start playing around with stuff like that more.
It's like they're building,
getting a response.
They're building like the foundations of the science that has become movie making, and some, like, it has kind of gone too far in some areas, but seeing it in that kind of beginning state of like the 70s to 80s where it's that pivotal moment, it's awesome. Annabelle did notice, like, there are some points where the music is a little too delightful and a little too, like, she was like, this almost reminds me of Homeward Bound, because that's like similar old school feel and everything. But I think that's where they play with you a little bit. Like, there's parts where, like, the shark leaves and like they're like, oh, thank God they could catch their breath. Right. And then it's like a little more fanciful music, and then it suddenly switches back.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my review. Let's close out with a few of our favorite quotes, and we'll wrap her up. I don't know. I don't want to tell the story. Yeah, we'll reel it in. I don't want to redo the story of the USS Indianapolis. That's something that you have to watch in the movie itself and do your extra research on if you're really interested, because it is a really interesting story. That's
a great story, and it fits in so well. One of my favorite lines, besides the here's to swimming with bow-legged women, was when Quint is leaving and Ellen is like, what are we gonna tell the kids? And he just like looks at her, he's like, tell them I'm going fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like those, like, there's just those perfectly placed little lines that are comedic but also like
kind of epic.
Yeah.
Oh, I really like the scenes where Hooper is like, they're totally gonna die. Like, he's like, Brody tells him, he's like, you want to help? Like, go tell that group of idiots over there to get out of that. There's too many people in that boat. Yeah. And then none of them are listening to him. They're like, you're not the chief. And he turns to her, he's like, they're all dead. Yeah. And then he goes in and tells that to Brody as well. All of those guys are dead.
Yeah. Oh, we didn't talk about one of the most important things. A dog dies in this movie.
Yep, that always kills Jess.
Yeah.
It turns her off of movies. Yeah. Even that happening in this movie couldn't turn her off.
Isn't there a website called Does the Dog Die?
There probably is.
And it's actually like they turned into a very helpful website for people with specific like fears or
and anxieties
or like triggering events and things like that. So yeah, it's called doesthedogdie.com. And I wonder if it started, well, no, there's a lot of dogs that die in film, whatever, but it did happen in this. We probably should have said something at some point, but like, now we'll mention it now.
Yeah, that's a good spot. right
after you've watched it and you're just listening to us discuss it.
Sorry.
Yeah. The songs, I really liked Quint's singing, and then at that like pivotal moment where they all start singing the show me the way to go home, I'm tired and I want to go to bed, I had a little drink about an hour ago and it went right to my head. Yeah, that scene when they started singing that was really fun, and it's so apt for what they were doing, and that's where like the camaraderie of the shared experiences was between Hooper and Quint.
Yeah.
like that, like they were showing their battle scars and everything, and then singing that song while drunk. Oh, the chalkboard scratch. The chalkboard wasn't there. Like when you first pan around that room, the chalkboard wasn't there, and it didn't have a picture drawn on it.
Of the shark?
Yeah, of the shark. And then suddenly it's there, and he scratches on it.
Yeah, you know what? Now that you say that, I could kind of picture that.
Yeah.
To me, this movie is more about the feeling and the plot than it is about the individual lines. It's such a good movie for so many reasons. And even like the score, obviously, the history of the movie itself is fascinating. So I'm kind of out of quotes at this point.
Yeah, just the final quote as they're kicking their way into shore. Brody's like, "What day is this?" And it's Hooper with him. He's like, "It's Wednesday. Tuesday, I think. Think the tide's with us? Keep kicking. I used to hate the water." Then Hooper's like, "I can't imagine why."
Yeah. A final laugh shared amongst like new friends.
Yeah. Should I just keep reading them and we'll just keep going all night?
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. It's not like I want to go to bed at all.
Hooper, boys, oh boys, I think he's coming back for his noon feeding. All right.
All right,
okay.
Let's wrap her up.
All right,
let's
fine.
Wrap her up. Yeah.
What are we doing next?
I just looked at that while we were talking that. So we put August as actor or actress month.
Oh yeah, I think we want to do actress month. We decided, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't decided on who yet.
Yeah,
we've got a few names bouncing around.
Marilyn Monroe's high potential.
Yeah, Audrey Hepburn. Helen Mirren could be interesting. Young Helen Mirren.
Yeah.
We've got some interesting actors.
Goldie Hawn.
Yeah, we just mentioned her in this podcast.
Yeah.
Married to Kurt Russell, one of my favorite actors of all time.
Yeah. We'll just get into it when we get into it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Helena Bonham Carter, some of her earlier stuff might be really good.
That could be interesting as well.
She's
we haven't done a lot
favorites.
of 90s movies.
Yeah.
All right, well, we don't know yet what we're doing, but we're going to do an actress for the month of August, and it's going to be a lot of fun, so stay tuned.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we're finally getting things through here. This is kind of a blockbuster double feature week. Fingers crossed that I can get both of them edited up in time by the end of the week. But
good luck, and we're also working on a challenge type addition to our podcast.
Yeah,
so
I'm really excited about that as well.
Excited to sort that out and get it out to you guys.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll see about getting that in September, potentially.
Yeah.
We have so many great movies to talk about coming up, so...
We need some more short form stuff to get through, like, all the ones in between.
Yeah, and maybe we change up the formula a little bit, and, I don't know. Well, we'll see. We'll talk.
Yeah. All right.
Have a good one, everyone.
Goodbye.